The Georgia Bureau of Investigation has ruled the deaths of Qaadir and Naazir Lewis as self-inflicted, based on results of the medical examiner's autopsy report and other investigative findings. The GBI also stated the fatal shots were fired concurrently by the brothers, which means they were fired at the same time. However, from the positioning of the bodies in the death photos, this would be impossible. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation will formally close the case of Qaadir and Naazir Lewis in the coming weeks, which means all investigative findings and medical reports will be released and available for viewing. Right? There are so many unanswered questions, and we will get to those shortly. Let's first hear what the family has to say about the GBI report, along with the local chapter of the Gwinnett County NAACP.
On March 7, 2025, Naazir and Qaadir, the Lewis twins, were taken from us in an act of brutal violence. Naazir was planning on leaving his home early the next morning to catch a standby flight to Boston, since he missed his confirmed flight that morning due to long TSA lines. After eating dinner and cleaning up the kitchen, their usual Friday routine, they left their subdivision at 10:17 p.m., making a quick trip to the gas station, then vanished. What happened after they left the gas station? Show us more videos. Those teenage boys would have driven off of a cliff if they had to drive on a curvy, windy, narrow road up a mountain in pure darkness. Their lifeless bodies were positioned in a way that screamed sacrifice. Scott Curlin and others took so much pleasure in the systemic white supremacist tradition, they shared Scott's murder scene photos with their children in order to desensitize them and encourage those terroristic behaviors. I didn't see any crime tape markers or any indication that would suggest it was a crime scene. I didn't even see a gun in those pictures. For months, officials have ignored our cries, but today we stand before you to say enough. We demand a full investigation and an independent one. The release of all evidence and arrest for those responsible. Qaadir and Naazir were loved. They were stolen from us. But the legacy is ours to define. Every time we speak their names, we defy the silence that lynching demanded. The fight is sacred. Stand with us. This is not just our fight. It is a test of whether Black lives truly matter in this country.
At this time, the NAACP Gwinnett County branch is demanding a full and immediate release of all evidence held by the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. The GBI cannot speak out of both sides of its mouth. It can't publicly say the case is closed, but privately say that they will not release all of the evidence to the family.
So in the 116 years that the NAACP has responded to lynchings, we know what a lynching looks like, we know what it smells like, we know what a cover-up starts out like. And so we stand shoulder to shoulder with the Gwinnett County NAACP and all the 100 branches of this association in Georgia in demanding that the GBI release all of the evidence. Now let's be clear, I know the director knows the open records laws just like I do. If the investigation is closed, then he has to release the file. I find it very hard to believe, as a 21-year practicing attorney, that these individuals drove to a mountain they did not know, up a windy, dark road behind a gate that was locked, and killed themselves. That's very difficult to believe.
There are so many critical questions that must be answered with an accurate timeline of events. Let's take a ride up to Bell Mountain, and we would like everyone to imagine two young men, not knowing the area, never been up to Bell Mountain, choosing to navigate the steep, narrow road, pitch black, up to the top. Any logical and sensible person knows this is not what happened.
So we should have a timeline from the point they left Gwinnett County to the point they ended up on the mountain to delineate what actually happened.
One critical question is, how much gas did Qaadir and Naazir Lewis put in the gas tank at the Shell gas station? If there were plans to drive 90 minutes to Bell Mountain, the tank would be full, correct? How much gas was in the tank after the bodies were discovered? The family should check the credit card or store receipts to gather this information. It will give them some insight of how far they were planning to travel. Another critical question. The gates to Bell Mountain close every day at 9:00 p.m. If Qaadir and Naazir Lewis drove up to Bell Mountain at night, how did they get into the park with the gates closed and locked? The deputy who opens the gates to Bell Mountain did not report a broken or open gate or seeing the vehicle. Qaadir and Naazir Lewis, their bodies were discovered by a hiker at 11:00 a.m., which means they were not there when the gates were open. Someone brought them to the top of Bell Mountain and took their lives.
When you look at, when you see this, how their bodies were positioned, you know that it was execution and staged.
Scott Curlin, the firefighter who took photos of the deceased bodies of Qaadir and Naazir Lewis, should be investigated, along with his family and friends. This is not the first time something like this has happened. This is the same scenario that happened to Rasheem Carter, whose life was taken in Mississippi as he was hunted like an animal. In school, the children spoke carefree about finding body parts in their yard.
Josh Middleton, his son is the one who was in the classroom that exposed where Rasheem's body parts were.
They found his body, all that was left was one eyeball, 2 fingers, and a wallet. The pig threw up in driver's yard and he buried it with a shovel. He's got Rasheem's body parts in his yard.
See, when you talk around kids, they spill the beans.
The PM channel did a story on the possibility of what could have happened to Qaadir and Naazir Lewis by means of a goon squad. Let's take a look. Let's take a look at a serious problem that is a plague in law enforcement all around the country: the proliferation of goon squads. Could the case of Qaadir and Naazir Lewis figure into the narrative of the goon squad? Could law enforcement be involved in their mysterious and ominous death? Once the Bureau of Investigations release the files, they will have to show a timeline and explain how Qaadir and Naazir Lewis concurrently took their lives. Wouldn't that mean 2 weapons were involved? The Georgia Bureau of Investigation will try and convince that Qaadir and Naazir drove up a dark, eerie, unfamiliar mountain road in the middle of the pitch black night, entered the park through 2 locked gates, parked their car, walked up a steep mountain where visibility was almost non-existent due to the darkness, and delete each other. This is a cover-up, and the persons responsible for taking their lives are walking around in Hiawassee, Georgia. Let's remember the humanity of Qaadir and Naazir Lewis, 2 handsome young men who had their entire future ahead of them after graduating high school. They had plans of starting their own business with a family who loved them, a family who deserves to know the truth about how their loved ones